Just one Scottish MP from the Labour Party will be taking the oath of allegiance. In Edinburgh South, Ian Murray won again with a majority of just over 11,000. Shortly after the results were announced, former Scottish Labour leader Kezia Dugdale told this programme how he'd done it.
If you were to ask me why is he winning against the odds, there's a formula for that. One is he has consistently distanced himself from Jeremy Corbyn, because he identified earlier on that certainly in Edinburgh South he was a problem on the doorsteps. Separate to that, Ian has always been proudly, in fact unapologetically, campaigning for both the UK and the EU.
Well, Ian Murray joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary.
Congratulations on your win. Should others have followed your example and actually distanced themselves from the Labour Party in order to win?
Well, I didn't distance myself from the Labour Party. I stood very much on some of the things that were in the Labour manifesto. But what I was doing
Struggled
was
to find the word Labour on much of your literature, though.
Well, that is not correct, actually. Most of my literature had Labour on it. There was one leaflet that was an introductory leaflet about me that didn't, but it was just my opponents who were saying I didn't have Labour on my leaflets, but that's just not true at all. The key thing here is that we have to listen to what the public were saying to us, and whether you were in Edinburgh South, or whether you were in Inverness, or whether you were in Gedling or London, or in the southwest of England, the biggest problem, biggest impediment on the doorstep was the leadership of the Labour Party. Now, I know that makes me unpopular with some parts of the Labour Party saying that, but I think if we're going to have to try and resolve this problem and get back to where the Labour Party needs to be, then we have to start with honesty, and that's the honest assessment of this election.
But that's your assessment. But Stephen Kinnock, for instance, says that actually the flaw was promising another referendum. We have others in your party saying actually the flaw was a mixed message on Scottish independence.
Well, all of that comes down to leadership, though, doesn't it? I mean, these messages are difficult to put forward, but in the national interest, it was always in the case that the UK should stay in the EU and Scotland should stay in the UK, and those are the key messages that have to be taken forward in terms, in my view, of the Labour Party. But if you talk to anybody who's lost their seat across any part of the UK or Scotland in the last few days since Thursday, they'll tell you that the biggest impediment was Jeremy Corbyn. Indeed, I spoke to many yesterday when I came back to Parliament when they were here clearing up their offices, and the one in particular said that the torpedo that sank his ship was the leadership of the Labour Party. Now, if we're either honest about that and do something about it, or we put our head in the sand and we continue to lose, that's the choice that the Labour Party now has to make.
Will you tell him that to his face?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn comes to the PLP this evening. Firstly, I think he should apologise for even having an election in the first place. We should never have had an election before we had sorted out Brexit. It was always going to be difficult for the Labour Party to win an election without that. And I think he has to apologise to all the people who've lost their seats on the basis of what the programme has been put forward for this general election. I think that's the honest assessment. Well, he's not going to stay on beyond the leadership race. I think it will start on the 7th of January. So having...
But there's some saying he should go now.
Then is not... Well, I think we're talking about a few days, a few parliamentary days, so I'm not sure that's neither
here. We're talking about a few months, so aren't we? He's planning to stay on until the new leader is elected, which is, the end of March, potentially?
Well, I think that's neither here nor there. I think it would probably be best for someone who has been defeated to go quickly and put an interim leader in place, but not having a deputy leader makes that much more difficult to achieve. So I think it's neither here nor there if he stays on or goes. The important thing is the Labour movement now have to put a leader in place that can listen to the public, talk to the public, and respond to what the public are saying. Otherwise, the Labour Party will never win again.
Does Richard Leonard need to consider his position, given how closely aligned to Jeremy Corbyn he's been?
Well, I think the Scottish Labour Party has to decide what it wants to be, and all the talk over the last few days about processes around independence are a complete distraction. We are either a party that believes in Scotland being in the United Kingdom or not, and we very much are the former. And I think we have to start making the case about why independence would be bad for Scotland, and that's a starting point I think Richard should be with. He got into the right place with regards to Europe after the European elections with a people's vote with the option to remain and campaigning for remain. That was the right place to be. We want the leader of the Scottish Labour Party to come out strongly on the constitutional position, because if you stand in the middle of the road, you're going to get knocked down by a car, and that's the problem that we've always had. We have to be strong, and we have to be strong on the big positions in Scotland at the moment, so it gives us the opportunity to talk about other things.
But hasn't this election shown that by opposing a second independence referendum, by opposing independence itself perhaps, it actually means that the electorate will not vote for you?
Well, we have to do what we feel is right for the country. We can't just have positions to decide, well, this might win us a few seats here or there, so we should support something we don't believe in. The Labour Party in 2014 destroyed itself by campaigning for Scotland to stay in the UK because it was the right thing to do, and I'm sure the Scottish Labour Party would do the same again.
But what about if public opinion has shifted? Shouldn't you move with public opinion? Shouldn't you listen to what the public's saying?
Has public opinion shifted? 54% of the public last Thursday voted for parties that believe Scotland should remain in the UK. The whole essence of the election campaign in Scotland was to stop Brexit and to lock Boris Johnson out of number 10. Those were the two big things. I can't even remember seeing an SNP leaflet coming through my doorstep that mentioned independence. So if somebody wants a mandate for independence, stick it as number one on their manifesto, stick it on all the leaflets and get people to vote for that mandate. But to appropriate people's votes to decide that that's what Scots now want, I think is wrong. And I think we should get off this process argument and start talking about why independence would be detrimental to Scotland.
So there are two vacancies at the top of the UK Labour Party for leader and deputy leader. There's now a vacancy for a deputy leader in Scotland after Leslie Laird stood down last night. Are you a candidate for any of these jobs?
Well, there's lots of discussions going on at the moment. I think the appropriate thing is to get a leadership team in place, both in Scotland at UK level, that can listen to the public, can respond to what the public are saying, and then can put a policy platform together that can regain the trust of the people right across the United Kingdom.
But you might put your hat in the ring for some of these posts?
I think the deputy leader in Scotland has to be run by someone in Scotland. I think it's very difficult to do it when you're the sole Scottish Labour MP, but my sole focus at the moment is to try and ensure that I can represent the people of Scotland at Westminster with the Labour ticket, and that's a big enough job without trying to look at anything else.
And just a final point on the leadership at Westminster. Rebecca Long-Bailey has emerged, it seems, as the left candidate. She seems to be tentatively had the backing of those who support Jeremy Corbyn. Do you need another Corbyn-type leader, or do you need a different approach?
It's not just about the leadership here. We need a new direction. And if we have the same direction but with just a different face and a different voice, it would be wrong for the Labour Party and the country will not like it.
Ian Murray, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Labour MP for Edinburgh South. We'll be hearing from Alan